Okay, so this is Lara, aka the Sound Sommelier, here with Anwar Marshall. I know you're more of a jazz guy, but my first question in interviews is always, "What's your earliest memory of hip hop?" And I know you've got some hip hop history in you too.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Um, for one, I guess my first experience, well, my first memory of hearing hip hop was
Hmm.
through both of my older brothers who are sort of huge hip hop fans, collectors. My one brother, Jamil, is a amazing producer. He goes by Small Professor.
Oh,
Um, he collaborated with Sean Price on one of his very last albums.
cool.
Um, yeah, he's got a whole. It actually hit his Bandcamp. His Bandcamp is always filled with pretty interesting stuff. So check him out.
I love it.
Um, but I would say that even just learning my instrument, hip hop was always sort of a part of that. I remember maybe in fourth or fifth grade,
Mhm.
I was really excited. I came in school because I learned how to play the beat to More Money, More Problems, and I showed it off to my friends. That was like something I remember being super excited about. But
No, that's
yeah,
cool.
that's it. Hip hop is it's always been a part of my just musical experience. So
Yeah, I guess growing up in Philly will do that.
oh, most
Uh,
definitely.
what are some of the earliest records you recall hearing as a child in your home growing up in Philly?
Um, I would say I grew up in a household filled with very nerdy musicians. Like my,
That's good.
this is the best kind of household to grow up in for sure. My mother and father are both professional musicians, and they both have very different record collections to this day. My mother is a choral director, so she listens to a lot of opera and classical music. And my dad is really into like fusion and straight ahead jazz, all different types of stuff. But I definitely, have distinct memories of listening to Thrust by Herbie Hancock, and taking my dad's speaker and turning it up kind of like too loud, and
Uh,
that type of thing. And definitely, my mom would always listen to, especially around Christmas time, Handel's Messiah, stuff like that. That was always in the house growing up, for sure.
nice. So who introduced you to the drums?
Um, let's see. Um,
Sorry,
my
was that the first instrument you
Yeah, it
played?
was it was the first instrument, yeah, for sure. Um, like I mentioned, my mother is a vocalist, so she always kind of tried to pass along singing. So I've been doing that and piano pretty much since I was about 6 or 7. Um, but I guess they bought me a drum set for Christmas one year, and I was the kid in class for at least a year who was just like super noisy and always tapping on stuff. Um, and the lunch table, we would always battle. Like, we would make up beats back and forth. It was like the time to be noisy at lunchtime. So,
Right, right.
so that was a fun activity in second grade, second and third grade. Um, but then, I would sit in the back of the class and I still be making noise. So for Christmas one year, my folks got me a drum set, and, I took to it very quickly.
Those are some brave parents.
Yeah, oh, very brave, very brave. My mother grew up with two brothers that are both played drums, so she was
Oh,
used
so
to
she's
it.
used to it. Okay.
For sure.
So when did your love for music turn into a pursuit for it to be more than just something that you love, like more of a full-time passion?
I would say when I was in when I attended University of the Arts in Philadelphia, um, I was kind of, I was still living at home, but I was old enough to like start doing gigs. And one of the first places I had the opportunity to play at was Ortlieb's Jazz House in Philadelphia. I got to play with some really heavy hitters like Sid Simmons, who used to play for Grover Washington Jr., amongst other people, Mike Boone, Philly bass legend. Actually, Christian McBride's father, Lee Smith, would play bass at these sessions. But, you know, I started doing gigs mostly because I had to start paying my my college bill. So UArts is not cheap, and it's even more pricey now, but it's a great school. So you should still check it out.
I have.
For sure.
Who are some of your earliest influences?
Earliest influences, like you said, being from Philly, of course, the Roots. It's like the most obvious, you know, especially growing up in the 2000s. That was like, you know, I remember seeing them actually at the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia for one of my birthdays. It had to be, let me see, right after Hurricane Katrina. And they had, I forget which brass band it was from New Orleans, but they played the whole show with the Roots. And that was quite an experience. Just the whole atmosphere in Philly during those years. You know, of course, Questlove, I would say, and more on the jazz side, one of my mentors, Byron Landon, amazing drummer from Philly. And originally, you know, I was going to be a gospel drummer. So I was really into Spanky at the time. Daryl Robinson, amazing drummer who plays for Pharrell. The list goes on, but you know, Philly is definitely a drummer town for sure. So you know, anybody that I was listening to at that point, you know, I was trying to just try to. Actually, Kareem Riggins, of course, who, you know, amazing producer, yeah. But the list, I have a long list. So.
I'm sure.
Little John Roberts as well plays drums for Janet Jackson. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. So you mentioned your time at University of the Arts.
Yeah.
Was your idea of music altered significantly during those years? Like, did you go in thinking one thing and leave thinking something totally different?
I would say most definitely, because I got to play with a variety of different ensembles while I was at the school that sort of ran the gamut of style. So some of it was like sort of small jazz combo stuff. I played in the big band. I played in their fusion band. I played a lot of people's recitals. That's a big thing in conservatory. You know, one of your requirements to graduate is organizing and putting on a recital. But it's sort of the chance to play the style of music that, you know, you've been wanting to do the whole time that you might not necessarily get the opportunity to do otherwise as a student. So just being and of course, like I was mentioning earlier, just starting to sort of branch out as a sideman in that respect. While I was at UArts, really expanded my sort of stylistic integrity and creativity, for sure.
Nice. How did you come to be involved with the Philadelphia organ trio, the Mini Qs, in the early 2000s?
Let me see. So my earliest memories of seeing the Mini Qs, which is Ben O'Neill on guitar, amazing guitarist, plays for John Legend, and Luke O'Reilly, amazing pianist and organist, originally from Boston, but been living in Philly for probably 15 years, 20 years. I would say I went to see them at a place called Marmount in Philly. And this was a place that, you know, I think I was still underage at the time, but they just kind of let me in or let me watch through the window. But yeah, this had to be in 2006 or 7. And then, years they sort of took a hiatus and for about 7 or 8 years. And then when they started playing together again, they called me, and it was pretty cool because I used to sit in with them when I really didn't know what I was doing, but I was learning. But it's great to play with them, years later, and to record with them. Yeah, we just did a concert at the Sellersville Theater a few days, actually on Monday. So great musicians for sure.
So were they following you, and that's how they kind of like knew to get in touch with you? Like, how did that?
Well, I would say around that same time, we were all playing together in different. I played and recorded with Luke O'Reilly a lot and Ben O'Neill as well, but in different configurations. But when they started that band back up, they sort of tapped me for the gig.
Nice. How long have you been a member of pianist Orrin Evans's Captain Black Big Band? I knew I was going to mess that up.
It's all good. It's a tongue twister. Let me see. I think since 2010 or 11. I think he started it as my last year at UArts, and I was I've been playing with him ever since. And that's one of my biggest mentors, one of my favorite musicians anyway, and also one of my biggest mentors. And actually our last album was nominated for a Grammy. So it's great news, but we still have to wait another month for the Grammys to happen since it's postponed, but it's all good.
That's not nice.
Yeah. COVID-19.
Yeah. COVID-19. So the band's self-titled debut was released in 2011. Was there a reason behind recording the album in both Philly and New York City?
From what I remember, the band had residencies both in Philly and in New York. And so when it was time to record, we just Orrin brought the recording studio to the venue that we had a residency in Philly. In Philly, if I remember, it was Chris's Jazz Cafe, and we recorded the other half at the Jazz Gallery in New York. And also, the band is sort of it's kind of a hybrid of New York and Philly musicians, and musicians from elsewhere as well. But we would always take the bus either from Philly to New York or New York to Philly. Since 2010 when we started these different residencies.
Okay. In 2013, the group was named Rising Star Big Band of the Year in the 61st Annual Downbeat Critics Poll. Did you notice people paying more attention after that happened?
Yeah, a little bit. Every bit of press that the band has gotten over the years, is sort of, put more light on the uniqueness of that band and our catalog, for sure.
Nice. Mother's Touch, released in 2014, was the band's first studio album. Can you share a few favorites from that record?
Oh, for sure. That whole recording process was pretty interesting. It was my first time recording with a big band in a studio, and I was sort of like, in a drum booth by myself, couldn't really see anybody. But let me see. For that album, I would say there's a song that's like, I think it's called Tickle. It's like the fastest I could possibly play on drums for about like 10 minutes straight. It's one of my favorite songs from the record. In My Soul, I think the first track is one of my favorite records, which is like, it's a real like soul song. It's kind of reminiscent of Untitled by D'Angelo. It has that kind of vibe to it.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So you've been featured on several album releases with trumpeter and composer Dave Douglas and the Westerlies over the years, where you were referred to as the soulful young drummer. How do you feel you've grown as an artist in the last 3 or 4 years?
Let me see. In the last 3 or 4 years, I feel like I've been living in New York for about that long, and collaborating with a lot of different types of artists. I did a bunch of tours with amazing vocalist named Sommelier. I've played a lot with guitarist Ed Cherry in New York. And for the last 2 years, I've been playing a lot with the vocalist Jasmine Horn. And, traveling and playing these different venues and jazz festivals, you're expected to perform at a certain level every time, which is, one of the reasons I, decided to make the move to New York and, play with all these different artists, because you have to at least play to their level, which is pretty damn high every night.
That'll elevate you for sure.
Most definitely.
You, along with Josh Lawrence and Jason Fredicelli, lead a 10-piece new instrumental music ensemble, the Fresh Cut Orchestra. I love that name, which has been labeled as an eclectic blend of straight-ahead jazz, contemporary classical, progressive rock, hip-hop, and modern electronica. Is it difficult collaborating with so many different creatives to achieve your unique sound?
It is definitely difficult, but the reward was, always, was a huge payoff. With that, that type of large ensemble writing and playing, I've composed for that band and have been, one of the leaders with Josh and Jason. And it's really difficult, one, trying to manage that many people, as you can imagine. But also the variety that you get from, each musician that is collaborating with that band is really, it strikes an interesting balance. Everybody brings their sort of skill set, like Tim Conley of Mast. His job in that group was to not only play guitar, but he also played Ableton live. Like, he would mix in different sound effects and movie quotes, and whatever the song was about, he would mix in like a soundscape in addition to the rest of the band. So it's a really unique group, and we have some music in the can that we have to get back to. But hopefully when this is all, the COVID days are over, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, who knows when that'll be, though.
Yeah, who knows.
Yeah, the size of that band reminds me of Antibalas, and I remember interviewing a couple of guys from that group, and they were always talking about how difficult it could be. So
it's really difficult. It's a great band too.
Yeah, they're fantastic. You've performed with notable artists like Pat Metheny, Dave Douglas, Russell Malone. Are there others not necessarily jazz specific that you hope to collaborate with in the not too distant future?
Oh, for sure. So many. I would say, actually, I'm always working on music with Chemist, the rapper.
Question.
And see, my bad, I'm jumping the gun.
No, you're fine.
But
it's a good segue.
And I would say most of the music that I'm writing is sort of a mix of straight ahead jazz and funk and R&B and soul. There's a great vocalist that I went to school with named Jeanette Berry. We're working on some music together right now. So I like to keep my my regular work of recording as with as much variety as possible. So most of the artists I collaborated with thus far aren't really jazz artists, since I do so much work in the jazz world anyway. So when I work on my own music, I like to mix it up as much as possible.
Nice. So you and rapper Chemist, who you've known since your time at University of the Arts, collaborated on a few tracks for his Chemtrails EP in 2019. How would you describe the difference in flow or feel of working with rappers compared to working with an ensemble?
I actually think of it in the same, from the drum chair, I think of it in the same way. There's always sort of like a focal point, whether it be, sort of big band jazz or hip hop or soul music. There's always like a lead voice where, my job as a drummer is to sort of lay down the foundation for there to be, for that voice to be heard and amplified. So I think about it in pretty much in the same terms.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So in addition to being an exceptional drummer, you're also a composer. When did you become interested in composing?
Actually, during my time at the University of the Arts, I took a bunch of composition class and sort of, and some of those songs I didn't really, back then I didn't know what I was doing, but it was just kind of for practice. And then I later on developed them into some other things.
Nice. Was the show with James Poyser at South in March of last year the last time you performed in front of a live audience before the pandemic?
That was my second to last show. But that was probably a week apart from playing with Jasmia Horn in New York at Jazz at Lincoln Center. And I think that was the last thing I did before the world shut down. But I think that was my first time playing with James Poyser. And he's definitely one of my biggest influences and heroes, of course, being from Philly. Mm-hmm. And we were honored to have him on the last track of Chemtrails by Chemist on organ.
Are you still able to enjoy performing with all of the social distancing restrictions? I see that you mentioned before too that you played a show, but I've seen you've done a couple over the last 10.
For sure, there have been, fortunately, a bunch of different opportunities to still perform. Most of which are at least some kind of hybrid between live streaming and maybe a small audience, or no audience and just a live stream. But Smalls in New York, great Jazz Club in New York, has been keeping everything going for sure. Mm-hmm. A lot of different venues have been doing that, of course, to stay afloat, right, the best they can. And, people have been donating online. It hasn't been easy by any stretch to sort of pivot, to have everything online all of a sudden. But, we're still trying to keep the music going for everybody, the best we can.
Well, we appreciate it. Sure. Has recording for the Captain Black Big Band's latest release, The Intangible Between, already begun before the pandemic hit? Like, had you already started recording before everything went?
I believe so. I think we recorded that in the summer of 2018. No, actually 19, excuse me, 19. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was, I have fond memories of that session because we weren't wearing masks and we all had T-shirts on.
And you all like shook hands or hugged.
Right, we all hugged, shook hands, took a picture next to each other.
Aww. Breathe on each other. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Things we take for granted.
What was the experience like playing with pianist Victor Gould on NPR live sessions last July?
Oh, that was an amazing experience. And we're actually about to go in the studio again in February. He's one of my favorite pianists to perform with. He's got a very unique approach to composition as well as playing.
Nice. Yeah, I've been a fan of his for a while too.
For sure.
In a recent interview with Jazz Times, you said you have guys who are sometimes imitating the precision of the beat machine on the kit and then imitating the way Dylan made the beat glitch out. How has Dylan's work influenced you as an artist over the years?
Jay Dilla, he was the first, I would say, hip hop production I heard that had its, it had a very unique, sort of what I was explaining with that sentence too, was that he had a unique grid to his beats, which is mostly because he played the beat machine live when he recorded. He played the drums along with his samples, and the drums had a certain lilt to it that no other producer or musician did. And he was also a drummer himself. He played drums and he played bass and Fender Rhodes on a lot of his songs, but particularly the way the drums felt, it was something that piqued my interest. And a lot of the music that was coming out in 1998, 99, 2000, that he was a part of with the Soulquarians, Erykah Badu and D'Angelo, The Roots, Common. He gifted that feel to their music and to their records, which was a big influence to me still to this day.
Nice. You consider yourself to be a musician that's involved with expressing the different facets and emotions of the Black experience. Mm-hmm. How has positioning yourself in this way helped elevate you as a musician?
I feel like one of my biggest heroes is great drummer Max Roach, whose birthday it was just a couple of days ago. One of the reasons he's a big influence to me is that everything he composed was just honest expression. He was someone who, he was never afraid to talk about what was actually going on in his real life. Being in the 50s and 60s with racial injustice, like the records that he did with the great Abby Lincoln, sort of are, the Freedom Now suite. In particular, but Members Don't Get Weary. He was always sort of, expressing what it was like to be Black in America, which I think gave an extra layer to the depth of the music. And I think that's where the best music comes from. So I've always tried to follow in artists, in the footsteps of artists that express themselves in that way. Just because I feel like the music it just turns out better. You know what I mean? You
participated in a live stream with the Orrin Evans trio in late November of last year. Mm-hmm. How have you altered your approach to performance during the shift to virtual performance?
Well, I would say, for one, the gigs have been, way further and few between. So it's actually given me a lot more time to prepare, which is unique for sort of freelance musicians. We usually have, no time. Yeah, a lot. So, when your next gig is in a month, you have a little bit more time to, meditate on what you need to bring to the music. So that's been a blessing, as well as, recordings too. Everything's been a lot, more sporadic, which has given musicians a bit more time to flesh out the details, if you will.
Right, and relax a little bit.
For sure.
You're included in a list of various members of the global music community featured on Mast's fourth album, Battle Hymns of the Republic, due out at the end of this month on Alpha Pup's World Galaxy label. Mm-hmm. Had you worked with any of the other musicians on the record before? Yeah,
actually, Tim Conley, who is the artist Mast, he plays with the Fresh Cut Orchestra. Mm-hmm. And I think I've collaborated with pretty much all the musicians on that record. and he's another guy, like he's from Philly, but he lives in LA. Amazing producer, guitarist, super creative. Like, man, I've only heard the songs that I'm on that record, but his style is just, you know, always evolving. Really, he's a really special musician.
Nice. Back in 2016, you, Josh Lawrence, and Jason Fredicelli, who we talked about earlier, showed your support for the Black Lives Matter movement with the video premiere for Gray Freddy in honor of the 25-year-old Black man who died in police custody while being transported in a police van the year before. How did 2020 compare, or maybe how was it different, in your opinion?
I feel like, you know, the year 2020 was, you know, as far as protests were concerned, it was a pivotal year. But I feel like, unfortunately, it was more of the same. You know, the stuff that, you know, we were sort of highlighting in that performance. That particular situation happened, you know, way too often in this country. And, you know, it's still going on to this day. And it's something that, you know, I think artists should continue to amplify and to let fuel their work because it's a, you know, as like Prince would say, it's a sign of the times, you know. Unfortunately, things haven't changed. And, you know, as we saw with the events of last week, it reminds you of what, you know, what's happened for the duration of this country's history. And I think the year 2020, I think was, you know, it was able to be captured on camera. Of course, the difference of response of the way the Black Lives Matter protests went, and in context of, you know, what was happening at the time with these different murders, and the response of the government and law enforcement when those people aren't Black is obviously very, very different. And I'm happy that 2020 happened to, you know, sort of display that the same, you know, America is the same kind of as it has been, and it needs to change.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Anwar, I really appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything else that you want to add or promote?
You see, just be on the lookout for new music. 2021 is going to be a year of lots of recording. It already has been. So yeah, just stay tuned. Hopefully everybody's able to stay safe and healthy, and, you know, hopefully we get past this and, you know, back to live performance.
Yeah. Is here the best place for people to follow you? Is there anywhere else where you would have?
For sure. IG is the best, but also I have Twitter, Facebook. You know, I'm in the process of putting my website together, my Bandcamp together, because I have a lot of music about to come out. So stay tuned.
Yeah, Bandcamp is the best.
Yeah, Bandcamp is the best, for sure.
Well, I hope you have a great night, and I will see you soon, hopefully.
For sure. Hope so.
Have a good one, Anwar. Thanks.
All right, take care. Peace.